The Father's Promise by Donnalynn Hess. Chapter 22. A Refugee. May 1943. Ye have heard that it hath been said, Thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. Matthew 5:43-45. It was spring. The forest was alive with green trees and brightly colored wildflowers. 4 winters had passed since Rudy had found Ingrid. During that time, Rudy had been growing at an incredible rate, so fast in fact that sometimes he felt as if his large hands and feet belonged to someone else. And Ingrid had not been so fortunate. Although Rudy had done his best to see that she was well fed, it seemed that no amount of care could put much weight on her tiny frame, nor had she grown much taller. Despite her slow growth, however, she had always seemed active and healthy, until the last week or so, when she developed a strange rash on her hands and feet. At first, the rash seemed only to annoy her by causing a constant itching. Then she lost her appetite and grew restless at night. Rudy began to worry. Come on, Ingrid, he pleaded, as he placed some berries he had picked into her hand. You really have to eat. She took them listlessly, but made no attempt to eat them. If you eat, I'll get you more drawing stones and make you some more pencils, he said, trying to tempt her. Rudy had discovered Ingrid's passion for making pictures real early in their time together, and he had tried to keep her supplied and smooth, light-colored stones and charred bark. The stones were a good substitute for paper, and the bark made excellent pencil. But now, even the promise of art supplies could not make her eat the few berries he had given to her. She sat motionless, her toy rabbit draped carelessly across her knee. The plaything had taken quite a beating during their time together. It was so soiled and ragged that it could scarcely be identified as a rabbit any longer. Rudy had tried to take it from her once to wash it, but she protested so strongly that he finally gave up. It was their only real argument. I wish my father were here, he finally said, speaking more to himself than to Ingrid. He'd be able to do something for you. Even Oscar would have been able to do more for you than I can now. But the thought of Oscar brought another idea to mind. He remembered Anna. Maybe she could help. He had not been to see her since that night over 3 years ago when he and Oscar had parted. After the Germans had increased their threats, the villagers grew more fearful. Farmers began reporting their neighbors for housing or feeding Jews or resistance fighters. Rudy had heard of several villagers who had been shot because of such accusations. Although Anna's farm was more secluded than most, Rudy still hesitated to visit, mostly because of Joseph. That boy could not be trusted. But now, as he looked at Ingrid, he began to reconsider. Maybe there was some way to go to Anna's without putting her in any danger. If Joseph kept quiet, Rudy could pass off as Anna's hired help, for even if some of the other villagers did see him, he knew that they would not suspect that he was Jewish, and it was common for young Polish boys who had lost their families to drift from farm to farm, working for food and shelter. Maybe, just maybe, he could stay with her until Ingrid was well again. He could at least visit Anna and see what she thought of the idea. He was confident that she would be honest with him. Even if she does advise us to return to the forest, he thought, a visit will help. I can at least get some advice and possibly some medicine for Ingrid. When Anna opened the door, Rudy was somewhat startled. He had remembered her being much taller and more friendly. She did not seem particularly glad to see him. "Hello, Anna," he said, then hesitated. "You said if I ever needed anything to—" "Rudy," she gasped, cutting him off. "Come on, come in," she urged, looking more and more as he remembered her. She motioned for them to come and sit down. "You've certainly changed," she said, and rushed about the kitchen, getting plates and food out of the cupboards. "I guess I have," Rudy admitted, as he sat down and lifted Ingrid up on his knee. "And who's this?" Anna asked, as she set some bread before them. "This is Ingrid," Rudy answered as he began to eat. Anna smiled and bent forward to greet the little girl. "How do you do, Ingrid?" "She doesn't talk," Rudy said between mouthfuls. "But believe me," he added with a smile, "she can let you know what she wants." Rudy tried without success to get Ingrid to eat a piece of bread. "She doesn't seem to have much spunk tonight," Anna observed. "No," said Rudy. "That's why I've come. She's sick, Anna, and I don't know what to do. See her skin? It's getting all blotchy. And she's lost her appetite, too. Doesn't want to sleep either." Anna reached out and took her. Ingrid made no objection. "Well, the first thing she needs is a good hot bath," Anna said as she cradled Ingrid in her lap. She glanced at Rudy. "And I think you could use one as well." "I think you're right," said Rudy, and he felt the color rising in his cheeks. She then leaned back in her chair and gave him a more thorough appraisal. "You could use a haircut and some new clothes as well. You should have seen my hair before now. It got so bad that I had to take a chance at visiting a farmer and convincing him to let me use his shears. As it turned out, his wife gave Ingrid and me some clothes as well. I still can't believe how much you've grown." She gave her head a shake. "You must be at least a foot taller. It's a good thing you grew up faster than you grew out. Otherwise, you would have ripped those trousers to shreds." Rudy laughed. "Haven't had a chance to look at myself much since I saw you last." "Then it's time you did," said Anna. "I think you may be surprised. Go. There's a small mirror on the bureau over there." Rudy went over to the bureau and picked up the mirror. He stood a moment looking at the intricately carved handle, as if stalling for time. For some reason, he was hesitant to bring the mirror up to his face. From Anna's reaction, he was not so sure he wanted to see how he had changed. What he did see completely astonished him. Aside from the fact that his hair was an absolutely matted mess, he could barely recognize his face. He was no longer a round-faced boy. His face was much thinner and more angular. His features were larger, his jaw strong. As he stood staring at himself, he realized that though he was fair like his mother, he looked more like his father than he had ever imagined possible. "You turned out to be quite a handsome young man," Anna said, "though you'll not be able to see that until you get cleaned up." Rudy was still too dazed to comment. She tried unsuccessfully to hide a smile. "If you can pull yourself away from that mirror, you might help me get your bath ready." "Oh, sure, sorry," Rudy said. He turned away from the mirror. "Go into the next room there and bring that larger metal tub out here," Anna instructed him. "You'll find it behind the curtain." Rudy obeyed. "You're both going to need some new clothes," Anna was saying as Rudy re-entered with the tub. "Those that you have on now will have to be burned." "But this is all I have," he said, "and Ingrid doesn't have any other clothes either. I found her in a hayloft." Anna looked indignant. "It's disgraceful the things helpless children are driven to these days," she said. She stood several moments thinking, her hands resting firmly on her hips. "I think I can find some for you," she said. "I still have some of my husband's things, and you've grown enough to where they will fit you nicely, I think." Thank you, he said. Anna walked over and collected the clothes and scarf Rudy had removed as soon as he had entered the cottage. She gathered up Ingrid's coat as well. You can have my coat, he told her, but you'd better leave the scarf. Anna was firm. It all goes. But it's not mine, Anna. It's Oscar's, he explained. I don't mind you burning my clothes, but I'm not so sure about letting you burn his. Oscar's, is it? Anna crossed the room and dropped the clothes just outside the door. Well, then? Well, when he returns and asks you for it, you just send him to me. I'll take care of him. I bet you will, said Rudy with a smile. It'll take me a bit more time to come up with something for Ingrid, she said. I'll have to make her some, but until I can get to that, I can certainly find something to at least wrap her up in. Well, said Rudy, you've solved all the problems before I've even thought of them. Not all of them, said Anna, watching Ingrid carefully. She motioned for Rudy to come closer to her. That rabbit, she said, pointing at Ingrid's once stuffed toy, it will have to be burned with the clothes. Rudy shook his head. I think she'd rather let me go than that rabbit. I was afraid of that, Anna said. I was afraid of that. Anna set a pot of water on the stove to heat. Still, I'm afraid that rash of hers is infectious. That toy is too filthy to keep. For her own good, it has to go. Can't we wash it or something? Pleaded Rudy. I've thought of that, said Anna, but it's so ragged now that it would never hold up under a decent scrubbing. I don't know, Anna. I don't know, Anna. In all the time I've known her, she hasn't let that thing out of her sight. But Anna was firm on the point. Do you want to speak to her, or shall I? She asked. Ingrid sat looking at both from across the room. Rudy could tell that she sensed something was wrong. He had found long ago that there was no hiding things from her. Listen, Ingrid, he began as he walked over to the table and pulled a chair close to hers. Your rabbit? It's awfully dirty. She looked at him suspiciously, then drew the ragged toy closer to her. Rudy took a deep breath and then continued. We think it may be what's making you sick. We're going to have to, put it away. Her lower lip began to tremble, and she turned her face from him. Look, Ingrid, he said, I'd never take it from you if I didn't have to. It's just that I love you. I don't want you to be sick. You understand that, don't you? He reached out and gently took the rabbit from her. She did not fight him, which in some ways only made it worse for him. Instead of fighting, she simply gave up. Then, sliding down from her chair, she went over to the corner of the room. Rudy handed the toy to Anna and followed Ingrid. She stood facing the wall so that Rudy could not see her face. Still, he could tell by her very posture that she felt betrayed. He reached out to her and took her hand, but she drew back from him. He looked at Anna, who stood holding the toy. I'll be right back, she said, and left without further explanation. Rudy continued kneeling beside Ingrid, feeling absolutely wretched until Anna returned. When she re-entered, she no longer held the rabbit, but in its place she had a puppy. It was the prettiest dog he had ever seen. She brought the puppy to Rudy and handed it to him. It was small enough to lay comfortably along his forearm and hand, its front legs dangling down on either side. It was as white as snow and had bright blue eyes. As he took it, it gave him a friendly swipe. It gave him a friendly swipe on the face with its lolling tongue. What kind is it? He whispered. A sledge dog, a Malamute, Anna said, no longer talking softly. I got rid of all the pups but this one. I couldn't part with it, at least not until I found someone who'd love it and take care of it. Rudy turned again to Ingrid. Ingrid, here's something for you. It's not a rabbit, but it needs someone to care for it. She turned only slightly, but enough to catch a glimpse of the dog. Does it have a name? Rudy asked. I call her Sasha, Anna replied. Rudy put Sasha down beside Ingrid. The pup moved over and licked Ingrid's boots. After his initial inspection, Sasha decided it was safe to sit on Ingrid's feet. Once comfortably settled, she began to rub her nose against the little girl's legs. See? She doesn't want to take care of her. She wants you to, Rudy told Ingrid. Ingrid doesn't want me to take care of her. She wants you to, she told Ingrid. Ingrid looked down at the soft white ball of fur. After a moment's hesitation, she leaned over and tried to hold the puppy in her hands. Rudy breathed a sigh of relief. The crisis was over. It feels great to be clean, said Rudy as he set some plates on the table for dinner. Thanks for the haircut, too, he added, returning for some dishes. You needn't thank me, Anna laughed. I only helped you clean up out of self-defense. Rudy took the bantering good-naturedly. In any case, it has helped. Even Ingrid's perked up a little bit now that she's had a bath and all. Look, she's even hungry. She's got her fingers in the cheese, he said, taking the cups Anna had given him. Yes, she does, said Anna, but you notice he's not the one. She's not the one eating it. Rudy turned. Sure enough, Ingrid was taking hunks of cheese from the plate and feeding them to Sasha. Well, he said, at least the dog's got a good appetite. I still think Ingrid's feeling better, though. Don't you? Maybe a good bath was all that she needed. I think the bath helped, said Anna. I also put some ointment on her, but it'll be a few days before we know for sure if she needs something more. Seeing Rudy's concern, she added, I'm sure she'll be fine in a week or two, though. By the way, Rudy asked as they sat down to dinner, where's Joseph? Haven't seen him in several months, Anna said. What happened? Did you have an argument or something? Anna laughed. Rudy, you should remember enough about Joseph to know that everyone argued with him. I don't think he'd pick a fight with you now, though. You're probably a good head taller than he is, and I assure you he is not a brave boy. As to why he left, to be honest, I don't know for sure, though I have my suspicions. I know only that he's gone to Warsaw. Why in the world would he want to go into the city? Rudy asked. He was much better off here, plenty to eat and a warm place to sleep. Anna, Warsaw was awful when I left it 4 years ago. People were starving to death then. I'm sure it hasn't gotten any better. She looked at him with a curious expression. Most of the people were starving, Rudy, but I'll wager that there were others who knew how to fill their bellies and make a profit besides. The only people I saw with full bellies were the Germans, Rudy answered. And the Poles who'd work for them, Anna added. I didn't know anybody like that, Rudy said. Of course you didn't, Anna said. First of all, I doubt your father was the kind of man who knew such people, and if he did, I doubt he would have let you associate with them. Besides, you must remember that you left Warsaw only months after the takeover. The Gestapo hadn't had time to stir up enough ruckus to make the rats come running out of their holes. Rudy frowned. No Poles would help a Nazi? No Pole would help a Nazi. You forget Joseph. Joseph's just stupid. He talks like he would, but if he'd been in the city and seen what they were like, he would change his mind all right. Then why does he stay in the city? Asked Anna. Rudy hesitated. I can't answer that, he finally said. I believe I can, Anna told him. I think he's doing some spying for the Nazis and getting a good price for it. What kind of spying? Asked Rudy. Oh, like finding Jews who have gone into hiding to escape deportation? The Germans pay well for such information. I'm telling you, Annie, not even Joseph could do such a thing. Not once he'd seen the Nazis in action, said Rudy. Anna's voice was almost sharp. Do you think that the Nazis are the only men who are cruel? Her look and her voice made him feel a little foolish. Of course not, but they are the worst. I see, said Annie. The Poles and French and English and Americans, they could they could not do so bad. No, said Rudy. Or no, said Rudy. You're wrong, Rudy, she said. You know, I have not always been a farm girl. I grew up in the city. My father's business often took him to other parts of Europe, and a few times the family went along with him. We went to France twice and England once. Do you know what I found, Rudy? I found that there are good and bad men everywhere. Rudy sat staring down at his plate. You don't believe me, she said. I believe you, Anna, Rudy finally admitted. As a matter of fact, I was just thinking how much like my father you sounded. Oh, yes, your father, Anna said. Oscar told me of him. A good man. Always right, too, she added, smiling. Most always, Rudy said. Tell me, said Anna, what would your father say? Rudy smiled. He would say, Rudy, men are not evil because they follow Hitler. They follow Hitler because they are evil, because they refuse the grace of God. And he would remind me that apart from God's grace, I could be just as they are. Do you believe that? Said Anna. Anna asked. Rudy hesitated a moment. Yes, he finally answered. The things that I have seen during this war have made me very angry, Anna. So angry that I have at times been filled with hate. You have a right to be angry, and even to hate at times, she said. I'm certain even a man like your father would agree. Yes, said Rudy. He'd agree that I should hate the evil, and even that I should do all in my power to fight it. But he'd also tell me that I must fight because I love the good, not because I hate men. It's hard to separate the men from the evil they do. Are you able to do that? Asked Anna. He had to hesitate on that. I know that I love the good, he faltered. Then you are farther than most men, said Anna. Although Anna was satisfied with his growth, Rudy knew that neither his earthly father nor heavenly father would be. They would not be satisfied until his heart was pure enough to hate evil without hating evil men. And he had an uneasy feeling that there would soon come a time when God would try him and see, indeed, what kind of heart he had.